All right, Matt Parker, let's give away a surfboard.
Let's do it.
Dude, can you imagine anything greater to give away?
No.
It's the coolest.
I want to get one.
I know. I was telling Chaz today, I was like, dude, if I won the CoCo board,
Yeah.
I think I'd ride it.
Oh, yeah.
I know they're designed for women, but rather than finding somebody in my world that I can give it to, what if riding a female surfboard unlocks a whole new thing for dudes?
Well, I would say this is jumping a little bit ahead, but the whole point of the entire thing is that this isn't some like just surfboards for girls. The idea is to like see design through a different perspective and find new design innovation in how surfboards and how volume is positioned and how rails are shaped and where fins are placed so that applies just in general. So like to me, 5 years from now, this would be like a leading edge, like progressive design, surfboard design brand that happens just to be viewed through women's perspective, not, you know what I'm saying?
I very much know what you're saying.
Not a cliche like girls boards. It's like, no, these are, you know.
Well, let's go ahead and just get into it then. How did the concept develop?
I've thought about it for years. I've a fan of all types of surfing, watched contests and watched all different kinds of surfing. And you have these like elite, amazing female surfers. And first of all, you would never really know what they're riding, you know, like there's no women's models. So I have 3 daughters myself. So if my 15-year-old was interested in riding what Steph Gilmore was riding, it's like, who knows what that is? Some Mick Fanning model that's kind of been dimensionally shifted a little bit to, you know. So I just
But she certainly can't go to retail and find a Steph Gilmore model.
No, definitely not.
Gotcha.
Definitely not. And that's across the board. And so then I see a lot of these elite female surfers, and contest surfing specifically is framed around, this is how Kelly Slater or a guy is supposed to surf, and this is what a 10 is, and this is how you score it. And so women's professional surfing is kind of trying to like fit into that same box sometimes. And so they're being judged against like, well, a guy does this, and you know what I mean? It was always kind of just felt a little off to me. And that the boards they were riding were mostly guys' boards. You can tell like a lot of times you see, you know, strong, super fit athletes, and sometimes the boards will look kind of flat on the surface of the wave, like where they're not really able to leverage and roll it over. And then you look at some of the dimensions they're riding, and they're maybe riding an 1/8 of an inch narrower, same model as a guy, but basically like a little narrower and a little thinner, and they're kind of sized as like a teenager would ride or something, a teenage guy would ride or something like that. And then you look at just the anatomy, and it's like if, you know, an average women's foot is a size 7, and I mean, my foot's a size 12 or 13, you know, my foot is like 2.5 inches longer and wider and thicker and just attached to like a more of a, you know, just more weight and all that kind of stuff. So I've had that in my brain forever, and was just kind of like, maybe someday, you know, there'll be an opportunity to like do something about it, or to make. And I make custom boards. I make custom boards for women all the time, and I have with Album. And we kind of play around a little bit with that, but there's not enough of a sample size to really dive in deep into design. And so Stab was doing the electric acid test with the hose a few years ago, like 3 years ago, and it was a perfect chance to do it, because you had to design one. It had shape one model, and then you had to make it for CoCo, you had to make it for Mason, you had to make it for Michael. So it was like 3 generations, or 3 totally different surfers, but one type of model. So I was like, this is perfect, because I have something in mind that I would make, and I would totally do it differently for CoCo than I would for Mason. So I did. I made this one model, but hers was like 5'2", 5'1", 17.5 inches wide, but thicker than her normal board would be. And I got glass on fins and like re-sized and re-templated the fins to fit her frame and size and all that stuff. And then she surfed amazing on board, picked it, and the board won. And it was like, okay, this is very validating for what we had in mind. And so then in the subsequent years, like the last 2.5 years, I've just been we've just been R&D testing. And at first it was kind of like, I have all these other ideas. Let's see if this really works in different types of surfboards too. So not just a little twin fin, but all different kinds of shapes. So I was making all these other different boards for her, and each one was kind of like opening a whole new door, because she'd only really ridden shortboards up to that point. So it was like all these new experiences and feelings. And then I was in Australia, where our production is in Australia. And one of our main shapers in Australia is this like 22-year-old girl named Avalon Stark. And I was like, all the stars on, I'm like, oh, like how would it be if if she's young and she's like apprenticing and learning, but she's really good and she has like a little different perspective on it. You go in her shaping bay and it was like, it's just a different color. It's different feeling, you know what I mean? Different just kind of vibe in the shaping bay. I was like, that'd be kind of just cool to see where this went. And so I came back and I was like, CoCo, I have an idea. Because it would have been very easy to just do like a model, like a women's model under album or something like that. But it was too much of a gaping opportunity for the marketplace that isn't being served to actually make something really for that. So
can you look into my camera and see if I'm in frame?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
Thank you. I'm going to take...
Good guess.
This mat is...
did I kick it?
A little bit.
Oh, sorry.
I'm just going to move the mat.
Yeah.
Okay, and then make sure I'm in frame again.
Okay.
Make sure I'm in frame again now that I moved the mat.
Yeah.
Thank you. Action again.
Mm-hmm.
What considerations, what design modifications do you make in consideration of designing these boards for a female?
Yeah. Ideally, it's like, just the difference in her volume shifting is probably a good reference. So her old shortboards when she was on tour would be like 5.5, 18 3/8, 2 1/8, 2 1/4, something like that, like 23-ish liters. And her Bliss twin, which is kind of like her go-to performance twin fin, is 5.3, 17 3/4, like 2 9/30 seconds.
Okay.
But like 24.5 liters or something like that.
Two liters higher.
Yeah, like 1.5 liters,
Okay.
More. But like dimensionally and proportionally, if you looked at the two boards next to each other, it looks smaller, looks significantly smaller, but the volume is just kind of repositioned. And then also the rail shape is unique and different. And so if you look at a lot of kind of standard modern shortboards, the rail shape is very neutral. It's like almost like just a golf ball neutral surfboard rail that's just kind of catch free, but doesn't really generate speed. It doesn't really like dynamically shift the way the water's going around it. You need to be strong enough to really do something with the neutral rail. And so the apex of the rail on the CoCo boards it's lower, closer to the water. So it's a little lower, and the apex curve is a tighter little curve. And so the rails feel crispier in your hand. They feel like a little, not bladier, but they allow for the water to like wrap and release around the rails much easier. And you can kind of direct that power contact with the water in a more focused way. So they feel more reactive. And so the idea is, like so many women's experience with boards has been boards that feel a lag because their feet are too small and the boards are too wide and the volume's in a weird place. And so you go to press it or you go to turn it and the board just doesn't really, takes a second to come around. It's like if you and I were surfing a performance shortboard that's 23 inches wide.
Right.
Like what would it feel like? It would, like you could make it work and it would probably go fast, but be hard to turn right and all that kind of stuff. And so those are the main kind of considerations. And some of them look subtle. some of them, even in like the other models that aren't super narrow, like some of our mid lengths are over 19 and whatnot. But there's a lot of little design subtleties that makes a huge difference for someone with smaller feet and smaller frame, arms not as long to be able to paddle, as just different considerations.
I think of women tend to have hips, guys tend to not have hips, women tend to be stronger lower body, men tend to be stronger upper body. What are the design considerations in relation to those, or are there?
Well, they're just different balance point too, like different stance widths. So many, like it's interesting making boards for all different kinds of people. I can shape a board that is whatever, a 5'10", and a guy goes out and surfs it, and maybe it doesn't work exactly perfect for him because he stands, an inch and a half narrower, or he stands a little shifted forward, and another guy comes in who's the same size, who stands a little wider. They're right in the sweet spot, and it's a magic board. So those considerations come into play a lot too, as far as like keeping, if we're kind of shrinking the overall frame of the board or the overall outline and everything, like making sure that volume is distributed like under themselves to make it more manipulatable. That's really key.
Does the outline look different?
Some of them do, yeah. I mean, we tried to launch with a kind of like this foundational range that covers a shortboard, so like a rethought high-performance shortboard tri-fin that's a little bit more volume but smaller dimensions, different rails. Performance twin fin, which is like we found with CoCo, she had up until the electric acid test, she had never ridden a twin fin.
It's insane.
She's like 29 years old, professional surfer, and had never really ridden like a twin fin up until that point. And so I think there's so many people that have never experienced that before. So that's like almost like the true daily driver is the Bliss twin. Then there's a fish, which is the Trist. And that is another one where most traditional keel style fishes are 21 inches wide, 5'4" to 5'6". Like that's tails that are, 12 inches wide, at the swallowtail tips and all that kind of stuff. Big keel fins, massive keel fins. And so a lot of female surfers have never had a true fish experience. And so making one that's sized and proportioned accurately is like, very, very eye-opening. And so we have the Aurora shortboard, the Bliss twin, the Trist is the fish, and then we have like kind of like a rethought mid-length, which is the same thing. So like CoCo's riding like a 6'4" at like 19 and a quarter, 2 3/8 at like 34 liters or something like that. So that thing works for everybody. And then there's kind of a classic pintail, single fin, channel bottom, kind of a traditional Lopez style outline, but also reconfigured. So like the dimensions are, they're not jumping on a retro looking board just to pose, but like something that's actually very using those elements in the way that it should. And then a longboard as well.
To surf big barreling waves, basically.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah. So that's the idea. The idea is to like launch with like, okay, we have like a base quiver, foundational quiver kind of established that everyone can really like build off of. And then like we're doing a ton of R&D with CoCo and all these other quads and all these other different things too.
So you conceive of, this is much bigger than making a model for CoCo through album. There's a bigger concept here. What do you pitch to CoCo, and how does the company come to be?
Yeah, so she was in town, and she was coming to. I was kind of making her, just different. I'd come up with an idea, or she'd have something she wanted to try, and so when she was in town, I'd usually have a couple boards for her, and so I'd been like, I finally was like, okay, we got to do it. We have to make this this deserves to be an actual brand. So I kind of wrote down, like, I just kind of mapped out like what that would look like. Yeah. And she had no idea. She was coming just to pick up a board, just to like say hey. She was in town and just stopping in like she always did, just to say hi. And I'm like, you just sit down for a minute. I've got an idea for you. And so we just went through and pitched the whole thing. And but that was probably like a year and a half ago, maybe something like that. It's been a while. It's been kind of in in the cook for a while where we've been thinking about it and building out the line, like making a lot of boards. You know, we wanted to really like make sure the boards were good, make sure she'd surfed them a lot, make sure we thought through all the dims, put a site together that's at least like covers the bases of information. You know, there's so much more we have to do as far as like just understanding like the differences in that and getting information out there, like video showing kind of, you know, because most people just haven't dug into the weeds that much. So
she's obviously had the same surfboard shaper for 20 years probably of her life. How did that conversation go for her with him? How does she deliver? Yeah. How did that go? Was there any?
She was nervous. She was nervous about it. That Matt's so smart though. He's like, I think as soon as she brought it up, he was like, oh yeah, you gotta do it. Cause he gets it, you know.
Good.
I think he was probably gave her like fair warning that the surfboard business is a tough business, you know, because she's never been on the business side.
Yeah, of course.
And he's like, you know, it's not easy to do it. And so, but I think, she's, if you spend time with CoCo's amazing and like so straightforward and just great that
she'd be impossible to be mad at.
Exactly.
Is how I feel about it.
Exactly.
You know,
she makes you want to kind of root for her because she's just that kind of has that personality that draws a lot of people to her. So I think that was another thing about it is that this idea has been brewing in my head for a long time. And then it was like, CoCo's the right person to be the face for this, you know, and to
really does feel like she is. She
just, you know, we were in Hawaii last week and spending time on the North Shore. It's just like, yeah, it was very reemphasized that she's the right one because she's also off tour and she's looks more fit than she's ever looked before. Yeah.
She seems more energized than ever before. So it's almost analogous to what you guys were able to do with Josh Kerr, where he gets off tour and then gets on alternative performance boards and it unlocks new levels of his surfing. It's like, that's where CoCo's at in her career, you know?
Yeah, and it's perfect timing because she really is, like you said, she's like at the peak of her ability.
Yeah.
She has all this wisdom from time competing and time surfing. She still has all these years ahead of her where she's, like you said, she's in great shape and great mindset.
So when you present the idea to me, I go, oh my gosh, there's a totally untapped market. There's more female surfers in the water now than ever. A lot of young female surfers who, like you said, can't go to the retailer and buy a board that's designed for them. CoCo's such a great person for them to look to. Like, she's a great saleswoman ultimately at the end of the day. But I bet if you asked other shapers who are designing boards for CT female surfers and said, why isn't there a model for that V2? They'll say, there's not enough of a market for it. So it looks like there's a market for it from one, but they would probably argue maybe they've tested the waters and they didn't get a response from the market. You guys launched earlier this month. What's the response been?
Well, I think that's the interesting thing is stepping back is that kind of if you were a female surfer, there's kind of been two lanes you can go. You could be like, there's not a female Asher Pacey out in the world in the same way.
Right.
Because the path for like, if you're going to be a surfer who's a girl, you must compete. And this is the path. You have to do these kind of contests and surf this kind of way and ride these kinds of boards. And like that doesn't, or you can go like the longboard route and be like a model kind of route too. And it's like, that's not true to how everybody participation with surfing is. And so I think a lot of the shapers that are making like the F1 Ferrari highly competitive surfboards, it's like those only appeal to like a little sliver of the audience and out there in the world. And most, there's definitely plenty of girls that want to surf that way too, but there's a lot of,
But I would even argue the reason why they want to surf that way is that's all that they really see.
Yeah.
Through the media, surf media,
Totally.
There's not a lot of pro free surfer females.
Yeah. So there's just like, it's just, I think CoCo's, I tell her all the time, I'm like, everyone knows you can rip, like she feels, a lot of pro surfers feel this pressure that anytime they put a clip out, it's got to be like a clip because you got to keep like, you got to make sure everyone, and I'm like, no one's going to forget that you know how to surf. So sometimes you can just ride a cruiser and just stand there and just feel the wave and have fun. And that relates to people in a totally different way than having to do the exact, 3-turn combo and blah, blah, blah.
It's more resonant in a lot of ways, to be honest.
Yeah.
So the question, though, is how did the market respond, or how has the market responded in the first month?
Oh, yeah. So the response has been super positive. Like, everyone's very excited. I think it's like kind of caught a lot of people kind of out of nowhere because a lot of people hadn't even really thought about it in that way. And it kind of makes the light bulb go off with people like, oh, yeah, like if I wanted to buy like, what Steph Gilmore or Carissa Moore or CoCo, like what even is that? And where could I actually even get that if I wanted to? And it makes you kind of realize like, oh yeah, there's this. So a lot of people are excited about it. And, we're going to be doing in the next year what we call XO Beach Days, not a demo program, but like a hang, like a beach hang where everyone's welcome. Like where CoCo will show up on the beach with her quiver and her friends. And if you're 10 years old, and you want to hang with and you're 45 years old and you're whatever level you're at, you can just come and kind of enjoy time in the water. And it's more of like a little bit more of a movement of just getting together and supporting. And
good. I like it.
Yeah.
I like what you were saying about, and I feel like I've talked about this too, like the female CT athletes were only ever viewed through the male's judging criteria.
Yeah. And
so it then makes sense that the shapers would then be designing boards for them to try to surf like the men. And how limiting all of that is.
Yeah.
And so then when you are coming out of that world and looking at designing boards for women and like, is there a space in the market to do it? You guys are creating that space entirely. Like there's for anybody who does like surfing and even females who grew up surfing and they only looked at that, there's nothing to even look at. There's no examples. There's no context to even. So you guys are designing it. You're designing the context and the boards, trying to make people know that there's boards available for them to purchase. Like I feel like there's going to be a bit of a lag time until the market even fully understands that this is a path. Maybe not to try to pursue professional surfing as a free surfer, as a female. That's an option too. But this is just a path for a way that you can surf.
Yeah.
Like you can ride a performance twin. You can ride a fish, which is, like you said, never been accessible before because they were too wide.
Yeah.
It's crazy to think that just simply didn't exist.
Yeah. Well, I mean, not that or CoCo is going to take credit for other people's career shifts in the world of female surfing, but there's definitely in that world, even like amongst like all of CoCo's friends, there's like a huge like beating down the door. Laura Enever was calling it the fun tour, where it's like people just want to like, I actually want to ride all these different kinds of boards that I never could really ride before.
Right. So can you say who else has ridden the boards?
Laura Enever's been riding them a bunch. Like we've been getting them to a lot of really women that paved the path for a lot of surf. Like CoCo's delivering one to Lisa Anderson, and just getting boards out there to as many people as we can.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you can't say everybody.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a number. I think there will be a shift though.
Okay.
In the next year or two, in just who a lot of people ride for and what they're doing.
The team that you guys have built is incredible. Thoughtful. You know what I mean? Like really from Asher Pacey to now, obviously, I mean, Victor Bernardo too. We've talked about that in the past where it was just like, he was available to get and nobody wanted him.
Yeah.
And so just kind of recognizing these picks, is claim, and obviously Margot's phenomenal and sitting right there waiting to be plucked. So it just takes a right kind of keen eye to identify these things. Is Clay Marzo officially on the team, or are you guys just getting the boards?
This month.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah, we've been making the boards for a couple months. And he's another one where nobody's appetite for Clay's surfing has ever been satiated.
Never.
So there's this hunger to see, because every time he surfs something unique and magical happens.
I know.
It's never like a stock session where you know what I mean? And so he just feels the waves different. He feels the boards different. And I think he resonates with everybody because he's like the purest form of a surfer. Like he does not care. He doesn't care about all any of the extra kind of stuff. Like it is purely like if no one was filming him or whatever, he'd be going surfing the same crazy waves that no one else wants to surf in Maui and charging crazy slabs and all this stuff. It doesn't.
Do you have any idea why he wouldn't wear a wetsuit? Like in West Oz, when it's frigid, he doesn't wear a wetsuit.
You know, it's he and I are very similar in that way because I don't wear a wetsuit like half the year here from like May till November. I basically trunk it. And this week I was wearing my 2 mil spring suit. So
really,
I don't know. We have like, I think it just feels probably restricting and weird. And he probably has a different sensibility to the water.
Yeah.
A different connection to the water that the rubber and like get in the way of, I think maybe. I don't know.
It's fascinating.
But yeah, that's when he was here like a month or two ago. We were laughing, we were jiving on that because I hardly wear a wetsuit.
There was a clip fairly recently of him riding just a soft top, and I was blown away by the way he approached the soft top.
Yeah,
you know, he's so incredible. What style of boards are you designing with him?
He's really ridden very much traditional craft, like most just like performance shortboards, and so we're definitely covering the bases there, so he knows he has something that like he can count on. But he was surfing pipe this last month with symmetrical outline step up quads with offset asim quad placement. So they look kind of from the deck side, it looks like kind of a normal board, but with a little like beak nose, a little bit extra chip in paddle power, not very wide, but yeah, offset fins. But the reason it came to be is because he was on a snapped trip with Asher and Victor in Indo, and I don't think he'd really ridden a twin fin either. He'd never really ridden a twin fin, and he borrowed one of Asher's boards and like surfed that for the next like 3 months straight.
Wow.
And
organic.
Yeah. And so that's just kind of how the connection came to be.
People like boards that work.
Yeah. Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, so much of surfing is a feeling. And, you know, if you do surf for a job and you've had the same feeling every time you surf, and then all of a sudden you do that for years, and then all of a sudden you have a totally different feeling and speed and sensitivity, it's like, you know,
yeah, I get it. First of all, CoCo is the name of the brand officially, right? Okay. 4 kids, loving what they're seeing from her. Where do they buy the boards?
Yeah, xococo.surf.
Okay.
Or just Instagram, just search XOCoco surf. You find it too.
Are they going to be available to touch and feel somewhere?
Yeah, in our showroom. So where our showroom is in San Clemente, half of it was always album, and then the other half was like offices and different, just running the business. And we converted the whole other half of our office to the CoCo showroom.
Okay.
So there's one here, and then we're gonna put some in shops around the world.
Oh, okay.
And but online, obviously, you can get more info. And
awesome. And which board model are we giving away to a lucky listener?
We are giving away the Halcyon, which is kind of that mid-length twin. And it's kind of like it originated from Asher Pacey's Lucent model on the album side. But then I kind of configured it for if I was designing that same type of board for CoCo.
Okay.
So it's actually like I'm 6'2", 190, and I could ride the 6'4" as like my shortboard almost. So, and that's the same one that CoCo rides. So,
can you explain if you were to ride that versus Asher's version of it as a 6'4"? What do you experience as the difference between the two?
It's like the XO version at 6'4" is a little bit more of a hot rod. It's like it's less glide and cruise, and a little bit more dynamic feeling, like a little bit more spark off of the bottom, and it feels like it wants to be surfed harder.
Okay.
Whereas like the Asher version does a little bit for my size, does a little bit more of the work. It's like, you know, it's just more volume and more cruise.
Okay. Yeah. Cool. I'm excited, dude. Yeah. Congratulations.
Yeah. And yeah, that's what's funny. I think for the guy, it's funny. Obviously we're giving this away to whoever, but like there's plenty. Like Michael Ho has a XO, and Harry Bryant's been riding one all over the North Shore, like a little tryst fish, like a 5.0 that I made him. So there's definitely not just for the female.
Good. Yeah, I appreciate what you said too about it's not necessarily for female. It's just breaking down design and starting from scratch and seeing where it goes from there. CoCo happens to be the test pilot for this batch, but it's time for surfing, I think, to just start from scratch in different ways and see where it goes.
Well, I mean, if volume shifting is effective for CoCo and she's getting more performance out of a smaller platform but more volume,
yeah,
it's like the same thing is can apply to anybody.
Right.
You know, if I can ride something that actually paddles better but is more maneuverable and all that kind of stuff. So
exciting times. Good job. And congrats too on all the continued success. I mean, truly, you guys I'm always impressed by how you guys evolve. So
we're having fun.
Good. All right. Thank you.
Cool. Thanks, Dave.
All right.